Hello everyone. Today we are doing a project on connections. Basically, we are doing research and we are presenting items that objects that we're deeply connected to as an heritage. So today, Zoe is going to present her connection, which is corn, because she lived in Mexico for many years. So Mexico has been growing corn for over 10,000 years and has over 10 different varieties, from the most common yellow to the lesser known blue and even black. So could you tell us, when did Mexicans start using corn?
So we estimate the birth of corn to be 10,000 years ago, probably by nomadic people that lived in the north of Mexico in a less arid area called Oasis America.
Thank you. So corn in Mexico represents not just food, but also is linked to mythology, isn't it?
Yes, so we can see that the corn is very present in the Popol Vuh, which is a Mayan myth book, and in it recalls the origin of making according to Mayas, in which they explain that the gods tried to make man from different materials, and eventually each of them failed until they tried to make man with corn. That shows its importance in the Mayan culture. Also, the meaning of the name of corn in Nahuatl, which is a Mexican language, is Tlali, which literally also means our sustenance, showing the centrality of corn in this culture.
Thank you. So could you consider that it is essential to your survival?
Yes, so an important number to remember is that each Mexican consumes about 335.8 kilograms of corn per year. So it is really a central piece of their alimentation, and just as an ancient Mayan leader recalls, he said that during the past 5 centuries, while their people have withstood suffering, the corn is what allowed them to survive, which again just shows just how important corn is to them.
Okay, then could you give us examples of how corn is used in Mexico?
Of course. So traditionally, there are several main dishes. So this is the most commonly known over the world, which is tortilla, for which corn goes into the conception of the dough to make it, and then it turns into a sort of bread. And it is also used to make a type of soup called pozole, or a type of drink called atole. And there's also this famous Mexican dish called tamales, for which corn is part of the dough, along with vegetables or meats, and it is also cooked in a corn leaf.
So, are there any desserts made out of corn in Mexico?
So, Mexico traditionally does not make much desserts. So, of course, now there are chefs inventing all kinds of desserts based on corn, but there are not many traditional ones. However, corn is also used for different things like soap, or recently a new type of fuel.
Then has corn ever been used as a form of an art?
So, originally, there were sacred figures made with corn, but more recently there has been other creations, like by Fernando Lapos, who uses dried corn waste to produce objects of art.
Thank you. So, can we say that Mexico has the solution to our energy problem?
Well, yes and no, because of course corn fuel is a renewable energy. However, if all of the corn that is produced in the US was turned into fuel, it would only produce about 26% of the gasoline consumption, which is far from being enough to overweight other sources of energies.
Thank you. Then, alright, so there are some talks about Mexico importing genetically modified corn from the US. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Yes, so the reality is that now Mexico uses so much corn that it is unable to produce enough. Therefore, they have to import some of it from the US, where part of it is genetically modified. However, to not impact the farmers, they still continue to import it from those places, but they decided to not allow it to grow on Mexican soil.
Thank you, Zoe, for your wonderful presentation.
Welcome everyone to American Connections. We are here today with Flora Dascali, a famous culinary critic who will be telling us the wonders of clam chowder. The floor is yours, Flora.
Thank you very much, Mahdi. Yes, we're here to talk about clam chowder, the dish that warms hearts, the dish that some of us consider as the apostle of comfort food. The traditional dish that many North Americans love dates back from the 16th and 17th century. They can be traced back to fishing villages across the coast of France, where people would be waiting with chaudières, clam chowder, waiting for the fishers' catches and then to make a broth out of it to be served later for the community.
Oh wow, so clam chowder originates from the Europeans. Was it brought to the New World by the Pilgrims?
Well, interestingly enough, northeastern Indians made great use of fish, but the Pilgrims weren't fond of it. Therefore, we can't. But clam chowder has been created along the coasts of many countries around the world, so we can't really give credit to the Indians, but today it's a very popular dish in North America.
Wow, so clam chowder today can be found in different varieties according to you. Are you in the US, right?
That's right, Mahardeep. As recipes for clam chowder spread throughout the 19th and 20th century in North America, different variants have been developed regionally. For example, here we have the original traditional clam chowder from New England. It has a cream-based broth and includes potatoes, salt pork, onions, and butter, obviously clams. Clam chowder is amazing on its own, believe me, but oyster crackers are also served on the side. You can either crush them up and use them as garnish or eat them alone, like I do. Yes, now we have the Manhattan clam chowder. It is a tomato-based broth with other vegetables in it, so you can tell that different clam chowders are not based on the original one. There are unique variants.
Oh wow, all this is making me hungry. So this recipe can be used for a foundation for other clam chowder styles, or have they been modified entirely?
No, as you've seen, clam chowders have been modified entirely based on the region that they come from. Here you can see that this is Long Island, and New York is over here, New England is over here. So we'll be talking about the Long Island clam chowder. So you can see it's a cream pinkish based broth, and interestingly enough, it is made with a combination of the New England clam chowder and the Manhattan clam chowder to make this wonderful, delicious dish.
Oh wow, okay, so were there any conflicts between the regions about the recipe?
Well, funnily enough, the state of Maine actually wanted to ban clam chowder with a tomato-based broth, but luckily enough for us, it was.
Well, that's all the time we have, sadly. But thanks for joining us today, Flora, and telling us all about clam chowder. I'm sure our viewers learned a lot.
Thank you, Mahardeep.
Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to listen to Kevin's connection, kimchi.
Thank you for inviting me here, Aimuna.
So, what is this dish called?
Kimchi is a traditional Korean side dish of fermented and salted vegetables like Napa cabbage and Korean radish. It is made with a varying selection of seasonings like Korean chili powder, spring onion, garlic, ginger, and salted seafood. It is also included in. It is used in many soups and stews. It is eaten with almost every Korean meal.
When did Koreans start eating or making kimchi?
So Koreans ate fermented vegetables since the antiquity, and then chili was introduced to Korea in the 16th century through trade with Japan, who themselves traded with the Portuguese merchants who got chili from the American continent. At first, it was only used as a decorative plant, but then during the Yongtsin famine of 1670, chili was regarded as a food ingredient to replace salt. But even then, it was not generalized because chili was not suitable to grow in Korean environment. Chili paste kimchi along with cabbage kimchi were only generalized in Korea in the 1970s when with the increase of agricultural production.
Is kimchi popular outside Korea?
Yes, kimchi is quite popular around the world, and especially in East Asia. The US and Japan are the leading destinations of South Korea's kimchi export. Plus, kimchi is growing popularity year by year. Since 2011, kimchi's exports have been growing, and then in 2019, it has drastically increased. And some of the reasons of the popularity of kimchi is the recent popularity of K-pop and other Korean medias, along with kimchi's global reputation as nutritious fat-free food. Indeed, kimchi is full of beta-carotene and other antioxidant compounds that can help reduce the risk of some serious health conditions like heart disease, diabetes, stroke, and cancer.
Korea seems to have a limitless supply of kimchi.
And
Could you
plus,
tell us
yes.
please where kimchi is stored?
Yes, so kimchis have been traditionally kept in large earthenware vessels called ongi underground, to stop freezing in the winter and to cool down the kimchi during the summer months to slow down the fermentation process. It was kept outside in special terraces called 장독대, and in contemporary times, kimchi is kept in household kimchi refrigerators.
What dishes are kimchi eaten with?
So kimchi is eaten with almost every Korean meal. So we eat kimchi in restaurants, in household, and even with Korean barbecue. Personally, I didn't like kimchi when I was young because it was too spicy. And there are also lots of Koreans who don't like kimchi.
Is there only one kimchi eaten overall Korea?
No, thanks for asking that question. As for regional variations, there's the carrot kimchi of Jeolla province, squid kimchi of Gangwon province, and spring onion kimchi of Gyeongsang province. Traditionally, there have been about 500 types of kimchis all around Korea, and in contemporary times, the number is keep increasing. And as for dish that use kimchi, there's the kimchi jeon, which is kimchi fried pancake, kimchi fried rice, and kimchi jjigae, which is kimchi soup.
Could you please tell us how do you make kimchi?
Yes, I'll do that very well. So to make cabbage kimchi, first you slice the cabbage too, then you wash it in salt water, and then you salt down the cabbage and rest it for 10 hours. And in order to draw out the water, which helps in preservation and allows the seasonings to penetrate the food over time. After you make a special sauce with chili powder, minced garlic, sugar, salt, and sesame seeds, and O plus with glutinous rice flour paste. Then you cover the cabbage with the special sauce, and there you go. For the kimchi, you can ferment it in your refrigerator from 3 to 7 days to even a month. Then you can eat it.
Thank you for this presentation, Steve.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, this is your host Sayan from Indian Connections today. We'll be welcoming a very special guest, Aditi, who is here to talk about the traditional Indian sari, or as she calls it, 6 yards of sheer elegance. Let's give her a big round of applause.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here today because I'm talking about the sari. Having lived in India my whole life and being part of the Indian culture just as much as the French, I chose to talk about the sari because it is the most fashionable garment and everyone loves it.
Absolutely. Now, the sari might be a fashionable garment now, but it started from being just a humble drape used by women thousands of years ago. Can you tell us about the origin of the sari?
Yes, well, the origin of the sari goes back to the Indus Valley civilization. which came into being during 2800 and 1800 BC. And the word sari can be derived from the Prakrit word sataka, which means women's attire, and the Sanskrit word sari means strip of cloth.
Interesting. The sari could be defined as a single piece of unstitched fabric. So what makes it so special?
Well, today its definition extends to include textiles woven by mill or by hand, and a sari can be made with a bunch of different materials such as cotton or silk, which are the most common materials that are used.
That's fascinating. So what exactly does it look like and how long is the piece of fabric?
Well, the piece of fabric is actually very long, and it can vary depending on the way you drape your sari. It can be between 3.5 yards and 9 yards.
And what would be interesting to know is, how do you wear a sari? And how does this long piece of fabric transform itself into a sari?
Well, interestingly enough, a sari can be worn in over 100 ways. You can actually wear it however you like. There are a bunch of different traditional ways, such as the Kundi drape from Goa that we can see over here, or the Navari sari from Maharashtra, or the most common or traditional way to wear sari is called the Navy drape from Andhra Pradesh.
That's fascinating. Can you tell us about why saris are known to be an extremely sentimental piece of clothing?
Well, saris are extremely sentimental because they can often evoke a feeling of nostalgia, and wearing a sari can be part of your identity and can be linked with certain moments or events in your life and remind you of some happy memories.
All right. And with the sari being such an important part of the Indian culture, how can you explain why it's only part of women's attire?
Well, a sari is traditionally known as women's attire, but men can also wear them, as we can see. And there is actually a male equivalent to the sari, which we call the dhoti, and it looks like this, and it basically resembles baggy pants, but it's tied around the waist and pulled from the bottom and tucked into the waist.
All right. Thank you very much. This was a very insightful presentation, and that will be all for today.
So hello everyone, today we're with Meher Deep on Canadian Connections. He's a Canadian historian and he'll be talking to us about poutine today. So first we'll start with a very basic question. What is poutine?
Well, thank you for having me. So poutine has a very easy recipe, which is basically fresh cut fries, cheese curds, and gravy. And it first popped up in the 1950s in rural Quebec snack bars.
So does that mean that the precise origin of poutine is in Quebec?
Well, we could say that its origins are kind of hazy. All that we know about the dish is that it was made in stages, but most people do believe that poutine did actually come from Quebec.
Alright, so then if it's from Quebec, does it have a cultural significance there?
Well, it is the province's natural dish, but it has been co-opted as Canada's dish, which has met scorn with Quebec. But it's actually funny that the word itself, poutine, is still a mystery, because in English it comes from the word pudding, or in the French word poutine, which is actually funny because in Québécois, poutine actually means, it's a slang for messy.
Alright, well, so how did the dish become so popular that it is now a symbol?
Well, it all started with a franchise of Burger King that actually first implemented it in its menus and incorporated it. And then it moved on to McDonald's franchises all over Canada, and it just kept on growing. And then in the early 2000s, special poutinerie restaurants such as Poutine Salsa Poutine and Smokes Poutine actually popped up.
So do you have an idea of how much poutine they eat every year?
Well, the average amount of poutine eaten by Canadians is unknown, but they do consume around 200 metric tons of fries, which mostly all of it is used in poutine because no other dish because Canadians eat no other dish. So I would say around maybe 150 metric tons to around 180 metric tons.
Alright, so we've established that it is a big part of the fast food culture in Canada, but is it also part of the haute cuisine?
Well, it's kind of hard to consider just fries, cheese curds, and gravy haute cuisine, but it was actually considered, it actually has started being considered as haute cuisine with famous foie gras poutine that is being recreated a lot, and lobster poutine.
And so tell me, has there been ever any controversies regarding poutine?
Well, yes, there has. In 2003, there was a controversy where mothers dubbed the poutine police actually went up to schools in Quebec and ordered the dish to be banned because it's high fat content, so that it could be replaced with something much more healthier.
That's interesting. Now, to finish off, do you have an idea of the prices of poutine and what are good recommendations you have?
Well, the normal and average price of poutine is around $8, but if you want a lobster poutine or foie gras poutine, it costs significantly more, such as $28 usually. And my favorite places for poutine in Quebec are chez Aston's, Le Chic Shack, the snack bar of Jean, and Au Pied de Cochon.
So that was very interesting. Personally, I've learned so much about poutine today. I hope our viewers enjoyed it too. And so thank you, Meherdi, for sharing this information with us.
Thank you for having me.
Hello everyone. Today in Mali Connections, we will be talking about one of their many traditions, which is the Kanaga mask. And please welcome Maimouna Kone, who is here to talk to us about it today.
Thank you for receiving me today. I'm very excited to make you discover one of the beautiful traditions of my country.
Yes, now my very first question is, can you tell us who are the Dogon people?
The Dogon are an ethnicity from Mali. They are the only ethnicity originally from Mali.
Okay, and where are they located?
They are located in the cliffs of Badjambira, which is now called the Pays Dogon. It's in the center of the country.
Okay, and when was the Kanaga mask made?
The Canadian mask was created during the 20th century.
And why was the mask created?
This mask serves a religious purpose. It gives a spiritual sense of pride to the ancestors, and it protects the tribe from danger.
Okay, and can you tell us what the Dama is?
The Dama is a mourning ceremony among the Dogon. It's a collective ceremony which happens every 3 years, but it can be extended to 5 years. The term Dama means forbidden in English.
And going back to the mask, can you tell us, can everyone wear this mask?
The mask is traditionally used by members of our society. Women cannot wear this mask because the Dama is also a rite of passage in their traditions. After the Dama, boys are no longer considered as boys, but they become men.
Okay, that's very interesting. And could you tell us, do other ethnicities have a similar tradition?
The other ethnic groups in Mali do not have the same traditions, but in Southern Africa there are some ethnicity like the Bule Wankuru in Mozambique, in Zambia, and in Malawi, who have also the same tradition.
Okay, and looking at this picture, can you tell us what is the Kanaga mask made of?
The mask is made of plaited fiber dyed yellow and red. They are attached to a wooden face, and this wooden face covers the head of the dancer.
Okay, and I have one last question for you. Have you ever been to a Dama ceremony?
No, I haven't been able to participate to see a dance ceremony because there were some insecurities in the country and it is impossible to go to these regions.
Okay, well that's unfortunate. But thank you so much for your time and we hope to see you again very soon.
Hello and welcome. In recent years, there have been numerous debates over the meaning, especially of cities all across India, by several authorities ranging from historical cities, rich in culture and heritage, to even smaller towns. Today, we'll attempt to find out more about this row in today's edition of Indian Connections. And on that note, I'd like to welcome our guest, Sian.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad to be here. Great.
First off, could you explain where exactly these changes have taken place?
So as we can see on this map here, these changes started from the end of the British rule in 1947. Some typically anglicized names, as we can see here, were completely renamed or respelled in some cases. And in more recent years, similar changes have taken place, but to a larger scale extent throughout the country, which I'll be explaining later.
All right, that's pretty interesting. And what we'd like to know next is what has been the motivation, especially in recent years, behind this row of changes?
Well, many politicians and historians who've spoken about this topic have usually talked about the fact that in recent years, the rise of nationalist parties in the local and central government, whose narrative it is to sort of rewrite history in an attempt to wipe out the oppression of previous foreign rulers in India. So they basically attempted to make changes in order to rewrite this dark part of Indian history. And even though these changes have taken place much before, the general narrative was the same, I guess.
All right, now that we've delved into this, what exactly are the reactions of Indian people regarding this issue?
Well, a certain number of Indian people have expressed their concern about these changes, as according to them, it questions secularism, which is an essential part of the Indian constitution. Although the majority of people have shown little to no concern, as these changes were indeed, for some, justified. But what's interesting is that there are some areas who have retained their more iconic image, such as Connaught Place in Delhi, who has been given a more typically Hindu name. It's still known to many by the iconic name Connaught Place, and there are many such examples throughout the country.
All right, now what could therefore be the impact of this large-scale renaming on the Indian public and the country itself?
Well, if we take the example of the city of Allahabad, which was almost like a confluence of many different religions and cultures, it was given a more typically Hindu name in 2019. And as we can see, this site has been typically more a Hindu religious site, which hosts the Kumbh Mela, which is a religious festival that takes place about 4 times every 12 years. And it's also the largest human gathering in the entire world. Although a lot of people have asked themselves the same question about the problem that it poses to our secularist values and such. So we could ask ourselves how this would probably lead to some kind of change in our democratic future. And
Thank you very much, Seon, for this enlightening presentation.